And there's a thing called the carbon cycle, which is a self-sufficient cycle that renews itself. So we begin with Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 3. Can you center it a little bit better? Chapter 3, Canto 3, chapter 26, verse 49. Parashitrishtyate dharmo. Anyway, I can't read it carefully, easily. Since the cause exists in its effect as well, the characteristics of the former are observed in the latter. That is why the peculiarities of all the elements exist in the earth alone. Okay, now what does this mean? This means Krishna is the cause of all causes. But he also exists simultaneously in the effect of everything he has caused. So he is the ultimate source of everything, and he also expands himself into everything. And everything is made of his energy. So he has different energies. He has material energies and he has spiritual energies. And he is in charge of creating them, maintaining them, and reabsorbing them. So this is explained. So there's three things. He's the cause. He's also the effect. Usually there's a difference between cause and effect. Here there is, because Krishna is the supreme absolute truth, there's no difference between the cause and the effect. But yet it seems to be a difference. So he explains this in the 10th chapter, where he says, one second. Yeah, he says, Yad yad vibhutimat sattvam shimad urjitam evava tat tat eva vagacha tvam mam tejo amrisha sambhavam. Know that all opulent, beautiful, and glorious creations spring from but a spark of my splendor. So, Prabhupada explains, any glorious or beautiful existence should be understood to be but a fragmental manifestation of Krishna's opulence, whether it be in the spiritual or material world. Anything extraordinarily opulent should be considered to represent Krishna. So that means Krishna is the cause and effect of everything. And then it says, Atavai bhautanitena kim gyatena tavarjana vistabhyaham idam krishnam ekam sena stito jagat. Krishna said, well, what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support this entire universe. So, Prabhupada says, the Supreme Lord is represented throughout the entire material universes by his entering into all things as the Supersoul. That's why it says that he's the cause and the effect. Now, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen are not living things. They are material elements. But when Krishna enters into them, they look like they're living. And this is what's confusing to people. Now, another confusing element is that the soul is so small that you can't see it. Now, how do we know it's so small? Like, for example, everyone begins microscopically. You know what that means, Augusta? Yeah. So, do you have an example of that? No, everyone, like you and me, we all begin microscopically. Is that true or false?
Yeah.
How do you explain it? But how do we know it's so small? Right now, you're not that small, right? You're not microscopic. Did you begin microscopically? Okay, that's true. How do we know that, though? Okay, I mean, you can't remember it. I can't remember it. But science has studied, and we begin actually in the body of the Father. And the body of the Father creates these little, let's call them seeds. And those seeds enter into the womb of the mother, and the mother has what's called an emulsion of nutrients. And the seed is a microscopic thing. It looks like a very tiny fish. You have to see it with a microscope. And that's the beginning of every human being. And every living entity, whether it's human beings, cows, birds, whatever. They all start microscopically. And then they connect with an emulsion of nutrients, and then the person's body begins to be developed in the womb of a mother. It can be a dog, a cat, a snake, a rat, a fish. It all starts like that. Now, that proves what the Vedas say, that the soul is smaller than an atom, actually. An atom is supposed to be the smallest thing in the material world. The soul is smaller than the atom, and the super soul is smaller than the soul. How do we know that? Well, if we look, let's open up your Bhagavad Gita. If you look at the 8th chapter, verse number 9. And it says in the purport, it says, Krishna, or he, is also the supreme controller of the universe, and he is the maintainer and instructor of humanity. He is smaller than the smallest. You see that in the purport? He is smaller than the smallest, right? The living entity is 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair, but the Lord is so inconceivably small that he enters into the heart of this particle. Now, one time, Prabhupada was talking with his devotees, and he was saying, every living entity has a heart. So one of his devotees who studied microbiology and biology and zoology, he's a PhD, he said, Prabhupada, worms don't have hearts. So how can Krishna enter into the heart of a worm? Prabhupada said, how do you know that? He said, well, we've dissected worms, you don't see a heart. He said, you haven't seen anything. He said, if Krishna says that he enters into the heart of every living entity, the worm has a heart. He said, well, he doesn't have a circulatory system. How can he have a heart? He says, you don't know anything. He said, if the Lord says it, then it's true. Well, you can dissect the worm, you won't see a circulatory system, and you won't see a heart. So, does the worm have a heart, or does he not have a heart? Yeah. Now, let's go even further. Yes?
The definition of heart might be different for us, because we understand something which comes to the blood or something like that, but heart may be something else, similar to,
Okay.
we might not understand as of today.
Maybe. But let's go even further. It says here that Krishna is smaller than the smallest. The living entity is 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair. So that's smaller than an atom, a material atom, right? But the Lord is so inconceivably small that he enters into the heart of the soul. So now we're not talking only of something that's smaller than an atom. the Lord is smaller than the soul, and he can enter into the heart of the soul. So this is like unimaginable. We can't even measure an atom. Right? No one's ever seen an atom. They only understand it theoretically. What? Right. Well, let's say right now a tree falls down in Alaska and kills somebody. How you know that you're here in Seattle? How will you know that the tree fell down and killed somebody in Alaska? How would you know it? Yes. Do you believe the news? Okay. So, if Prabhupada writes it here, right? I mean, you can't prove that the tree fell down in Alaska. You just accept what the news says, right? Is that right, Tulsi? So here Prabhupada has written this, and it's in the Bhagavad Gita, and he's simply repeating what Krishna has said. What did Krishna say? He said, Anor aniyam sam anusmaridya. If you look at the verse 8-9, chapter 8, verse number 9, he says, he is smaller than the smallest. Ano means the atom. Aniyam sam, smaller. Anusmarit, always think of him. So, always think of Krishna as smaller than the smallest. So what is the smallest thing? Smallest thing that's given a measure is the soul. 1/10,000, the tip of a hair. Right? And now Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, he's saying about himself, Anor aniyam sam, aniyam sam anusmareda. I am smaller than the smallest. I'm smaller than the soul. And not only is smaller than the soul, he enters into the soul's heart. Now, that means the soul has a heart also, or something, like you said, right? Maybe we don't understand what the word heart means. It's something a little different than our conventional understanding. But obviously the soul has a heart also. And the worm has a heart. Even though you dissect it, you don't see it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Worm has a soul.
Yeah.
And soul has a heart in it, according to this.
And the worm has a heart also.
The physical heart.
We might not see it, but it's there. So this is Vedic knowledge. So, now, it's just like if the scientist says, oh no, there's no atoms, there's only waves. Well, have you ever seen the wave? No, you don't know what is what is invisible, and it's very difficult to measure. But you can see the effect of it. The effect of wave is that you have a radio or a cell phone and a television, and they work, and you get information transported through the air. Right?
What we speak here are also traveling through waves also.
It's traveling through the universe, right? What you spoke 20 years ago is somewhere flying through the universe right now, because it created some wave. So, what is the basic, let's say, structure of the universe? Well, there's so many mysterious things. We haven't discovered them all yet. All we know something about electromagnetic energy. We know something about gravity, but we don't understand either of them perfectly. But we can manipulate them a little bit, But it's much more subtle than that. Okay, so anyway, here it's saying, since the cause exists in its effect as well, the characteristics of the former are observed in the latter. So, let's read the purport. It says, sound is the cause of the sky. Sky is the cause of the air. Air is the cause of fire. Fire is the cause of water. Water is the cause of earth. In the sky, there is only sound. In the air, there are sound and touch. In the fire, there are sound, touch, and form. In water, there are sound, touch, form, and taste. And in the earth, there are sound, touch, forms, taste, and smell. Therefore, earth is the reservoir of all the qualities of the other elements. Earth is the sum total of all other elements. The earth has all 5 qualities of the elements. Water has 4 qualities. Fire has 3, air has 2, and the sky has only 1 quality, sound. So that means if you have earth, so in the earth there's smell. In the earth there's taste. In the earth there's form. Right? I mean, there's fire. And then in the earth, I'm sorry. In the earth there's smell. And there's taste. And there's form. And there's touch. And there's sound. But in the fire, there's form and touch and sound and taste. And in the air, there's touch and sound, right? And in the, in the water, there's sound, touch, form, and taste. Then in the fire, there's form, touch, and sound. And in the air, there's touch and sound. And in the sky, there's sound. And the sky, and the sound creates the sky. Or sound, the sky is, or the ether comes from sound. As sound, Krishna speaks the original sound, and then it, Om Pranava, and then as the sound expands, the sky appears. Okay, so therefore, the original cause exists in the effect, and the characteristics of the former, the cause, are observed in the latter. So, if the earth comes from the water, and the water comes from fire, and the fire comes from the air, and the air comes from sound, and so forth. So the former is present in the latter, or the cause is in the effect. But ultimately, Krishna is the cause of everything, so therefore Krishna is present in everything. That's the effect. So then, if we come to Bhagavad Gita, next slide, 7.4, Bhumirapo nalo vayu kam mano buddhirevacha. You can't center the text better? Hankara ityam me bina pakritirastata. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. So that means that all these elements are coming from Krishna, and they are his separated material energies. What does that mean, separated? It's like this. Let's say you speak into a microphone and it's recorded on a disc or a tape. Right? And then 5 years from now, someone plays the tape and they hear Advitya speaking 5 years before. Is the hearing of Advitya's voice from the tape or the disc, what is that exactly? It is Advitya's separated energy. Advitya is not there, right? But he is there because you're hearing his voice. It's his separated energy. So, therefore, another example is the human body is made up of 5 gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. and 3 subtle elements: mind, intelligence, and false ego. About 18% of the human body is made of carbon, which is an element that comes from earth. So based on this verse, our body contains carbon, which is an element of the earth, and earth is one of Krishna's material energies. Okay. So that means that not only our soul is coming from Krishna, but our body also is coming from Krishna. And that Krishna is present in the heart of our soul, and he's present in every atom of the material elements. Okay. So Krishna is present. If Krishna is the cause, and he is the effect, ultimately, of everything. Because the cause is in the effect. Just like from sound comes the air. It comes space. And from space comes air. And from air comes water. And from water comes fire. And from fire comes earth. Right? And so when there's sound, you have hearing. And then first of all, from the sound you have space. And then space you can hear things, right? And then from the space you have air. And now you can hear and you can feel things. And then from the air you have water, fire. And now you can hear things, you can see things, and you see form. You know, you can perceive a form. And then from the fire comes water, so you can hear things, you can see things, and then now you can taste things in water. And then there's earth, so you have everything there in the earth. So we see that there's a progression from subtle to gross, and there's a progression of perception of things. Okay, so now if we go to the next frame, and then in the earth, one of the main elements is carbon. Right? It says here 18% of the human body is made of carbon. So carbon is an element that's found on the earth, in plants and humans and animals. Okay, so now what is carbon? So first of all these things are made by Krishna. They're all coming from Krishna. They're all his energies: earth, water, fire, air, ether. Right? Carbon is part of the earth. So what is it? Carbon is a chemical element and is the backbone of life on Earth. Carbon gets its name from the Latin word carbo, which means coal. Carbon is a nonmetal that has the following common forms: diamonds, graphite, charcoal, soot, and coal. So diamond is one of the hardest things in the world. Right? They use diamonds to cut things with, even metals. And graphite is a very soft form of carbon. And then charcoal, when you burn wood and then you stop the fire at a certain point, you end up with charcoal. And then soot is the powder from the charcoal. And then coal, which is a hard, like a rock, and it's all carbon. It's used for fuel. So carbon is the fourth most abundant element in the universe. All living things are made of carbon. Carbon is also part of the ocean, air, and even rocks. Carbon in nature is found in 3 forms: diamond, graphite, and fullerenes. A fullerene is a molecule of carbon in the form of a hollow sphere, ellipsoid tube, and many other shapes. In the atmosphere, carbon combines with oxygen to form carbon dioxide. Plants use carbon dioxide and sunlight to make their own food. Well, basically, it's called glucose, and it helps them to grow. Most of the Earth's carbon is stored in rocks. We are about half carbon if we take out all water from our body. So what's happening here is we see that Krishna says that he is the source of everything. And then we have this verse from Bhagavatam that proves that the original cause, the cause of something is also in the effect. So if Krishna is the original cause of everything, then you can find Krishna in everything. You just have to learn how to see his presence. Then Krishna says that he his separated energies are earth, water, fire, air, and ether, or sky. And so therefore, and then more subtle energies are mind, intelligence, and false ego. Well, plus the soul. Okay, so the next verse, 7.5, says, Apariyamitastvanyam pakriti vidime param, that there's such a thing as a soul, an individual soul, like you and me. We are souls. And Krishna is a super soul. So now, in the body of every living being, you can analyze it like this. There's a body made of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. There's an individual soul like you and me. And there's the super soul. There are two souls in the body. You have the individual soul, you and me, like you and me. And then you have Krishna, the super soul. And then around it is this body made of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Now, at least 18% of the body is made with a particle that's in earth called carbon. Now, carbon is in all living bodies. And there's such a thing called the carbon cycle, by which it's being used in different ways, and it's being replenished also. A cycle means it goes in a circle like this. So it's called a cycle. So, for example, you breathe in the air, and your body separates oxygen from the air, and the oxygen goes through your bloodstream and helps you do things like digest and purify the germs and pathogens, and keeps you alive, right? And then you exhale carbon dioxide, right? And then the carbon dioxide goes in the air, right? And then the plants absorb the carbon dioxide, and from their roots they bring up water, and then from the sun touching their leaves, they get energy. It's just like the leaves are like solar panels for the plants. So the energy from the sun, that heat energy from the sun, the water, and then the carbon becomes glucose. C6H12O6, I think. That's the molecular structure of a hydrocarbon, right? And which is called glucose. Glucose is a source of energy. Like, for example, when you eat food, food has these complex molecules in it, but the digestive process breaks those molecules down to glucose. And glucose is what gives energy going through your blood. It gives energy to all these cells. Now, let's say you go to the hospital, right? And you can't eat because you have tubes in your throat because you're having difficulty breathing. So they put these tubes in your throat so you can't eat. So how do they keep you alive? Do you know? Inject you with what? Where's the microphone so you can speak? Here, go ahead. What?
They inject you with glucose.
Yes. See, they have these different tubes. One has water, one has glucose, one has something else. And you have some kind of a needle from the tube, and glucose is going directly into your bloodstream. Because you can't eat, right? They have these tubes in your throat to keep you alive so that you can breathe. So have you ever seen this in a hospital? Huh? Okay, Nandaram, can you pull up a picture of someone being intravenously fed in a hospital? Someone being intravenously fed. Let's write this word down, intravenously. You want to look it up on the internet?
How do you spell it?
Intravenoous, I think. Intravenoous. Is that the right spelling? Okay, what does it mean?
Intravenous, existing or taking place within or administered into a vein or veins.
Yeah, so intravenously feeding means they stick a pin or a needle in your arm and it's connected to a tube and there's a little bag and the glucose, and they can put water also into your body like that. So the glucose goes directly into your veins and it circulates through your body and it gives you energy. Glucose is the source of energy, right? Now glucose also becomes compacted over a long period of time in the earth, and it can become coal, it can become natural gas, or it can become oil. And then you burn the coal, you burn the natural gas, you burn the oil, and it becomes energy. So you can run your car, you can heat your house, you can cook with it. You say, it's all coming from the plants, and the whole process of the carbon cycle is established by Krishna. You see, now we're studying real science here, because all this is working because Krishna is present as Paramatma, and you're present as the soul. It's not working because of carbon or oxygen or hydrogen. It's working because of the presence of the individual soul and Krishna. If it was only the individual soul, it wouldn't work again so well. Without Krishna's presence, it wouldn't work. See? And the scientists, they completely ignore that, Krishna's presence. Okay, so now we'll go to the next frame. Carbon in daily life. Diamond is used in jewelry and for industrial purposes because it's one of the hardest substances in the world. Right? Amorphous carbon is used in ink. So carbon that's not solid is used to make inks, paints, batteries, and used for blacking rubber ties. Graphite is a mineral consisting of carbon. Graphite is used in pencils. So if you have a pencil, like Advitya has a pencil, you know what's inside the wood? Carbon, graphite. It's made of carbon. That's why you're writing right now, right? It's making some, letters because you're using a graphite pencil. It's made of carbon. You see the part that's made of carbon? Yeah, you see it? Look. You see that? That's made of carbon. Huh? Okay. But carbon in the form of graphite, it's a little bit harder than a powder, right? But it makes that powder goes on your page. And that's why you're able to write with it. And then there's carbon dating, there's carbon, and that doesn't mean you go out on a date with carbon. Carbon dating is you can predict how old something is by the process of carbon dating. We won't go into that now. And there's charcoal, there's activated charcoal. I use activated charcoal. You can use activated, we're using activated charcoal to heal our cow that's sick. Sita Devi is sick. She has a digestive problem. She might have ulcers. It's almost impossible to cure it. But you can cure it with activated charcoal. It's charcoal that's been powdered and infused with minerals and other things. And then we have to insert it into her throat because she won't eat it. So there's this tube, and we make a paste out of carbon, the activated charcoal, and we pump it into her throat, and then she swallows it. And she's not fighting us when we do that, because she knows it's good for her. It's amazing. First time she was fighting a little bit, but now she doesn't, because then her digestive problem went away. Her digestive problem, when she was full of gas, and she wasn't eating properly, she wasn't digesting properly, and the veterinarian said she probably has an ulcer that's not curable. He said we can't cure it. We're not going to operate on it; it would kill her, and we don't have antibiotics and all those things won't cure it, because she has 4 stomachs, and one of the stomachs can hold 50 pounds. It's called the rumen. It can hold 50 pounds of hay. And he said, there's nothing we can do. He said, the only hope you have is, why don't you use activated charcoal? So, and I sell activated charcoal in Uncle Harry's. It's a very, very amazing product. Why? Because it's powdered wood charcoal. And because it's powdered, it has an absorption factor that's unbelievable. When you take it internally, we sell it in capsules. When you take it internally, it absorbs all toxins in your body. Right? And then it helps you pass it out. So it takes toxins out of your body right on the cellular level. It's so pervasive. So Sita Devi, we thought we were going to lose her, she's going to die, but she's doing okay now. She's pregnant, she's still giving milk, and she's not having any of the gas problems, and she's eating again. Right? So that's because of the activated. Activated means the charcoal has been infused with minerals and other things. So it's an active charcoal. Okay, so then you have coal for generating power, for steel production, for so many industrial uses and chemical uses. And then you have refined coal tars used to make creosote oil, naphthalene, phenol, and benzene. Anyway, it just shows you all the things that are made with carbon. Okay. Now we're going to get into the carbon cycle. Now you're going to see that Krishna is the greatest scientist, and not only he creates things, he makes it perpetual, right, by the carbon cycle. Okay, so this is an example of the carbon cycle. So you see there, you have the sun. Now, what's the energy of the sun? Where is it coming from? Yeah, how is it coming from Krishna? What? What's that called? Yeah, the light coming from Krishna's body is called the Brahma Jyoti. So but the light is heat and light, and the Brahma Jyoti is reflected off of the sun and comes into the material world like that. It's a reflection of the Brahma Jyoti. What's the Brahma Jyoti made of? Huh? Living entities, yeah, souls. So you see how, now the scientists would say that's a bunch of nonsense, we don't accept that. The sun is coming from fusion energy. Well, what's fusion energy? Right? So they have a whole theory of what fusion energy is. But it depends who you're going to believe, right? You can, the scientists will give an explanation of fusion energy, but the Vedas say that energy is coming originally from Krishna. It's this Brahma Jyoti effulgence, and it's reflected off the sun, and it gives life all over the universe. If the sun did not function, we would all die in a very short period of time. Okay, so the sun is shining, and the plants are able to absorb the energy of the sun, like a solar panel. Solar panel is simply a poor imitation, or a very bad imitation of a leaf in a plant. The leaf can absorb the heat and light of the sun, and it's called photosynthesis. Look up what's photosynthesis. Okay, so photosynthesis is the ability of the plants. And by the way, the Indian cow with the hump, that hump has a nerve in it. And that nerve helps the cow do the same thing that the plant does. It is the part of the cow that captures the energy of the sun and makes its milk, urine, and stool powerful. That's why the milk of the Indian cow is so medicinal, so tasty also, because it's capturing the energy of the sun through its hump, and through a special nerve that's in the hump. Okay, so then, photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis, the process by which green plants and some other organisms use sunlight to synthesize foods from carbon dioxide and water.
What? Synthesize what?
Synthesize foods.
Foods.
From carbon dioxide and water.
Yeah.
Photosynthesis in plants generally involves the green pigment chlorophyll and generates oxygen as a byproduct.
Yeah. Okay. So these green plants and some living entities, like the cow, captures the energy of the sun, and then infuses that energy into its blood, urine, and stool, and also milk. Okay, so when these plants, let's say they die, right? So then they decay. That decaying process is called composting. In fact, Washington State, if I'm not mistaken, just passed a rule saying that it's legal to compost a dead body. So, if you want to be composted after you die, you don't have to go to the funeral home and be cremated. You can be buried in your backyard, and you'll become compost. Did you know that? It's the only state in the whole United States that passed a law like that. I'm pretty sure. See if they did. Okay, yeah. What? No, you bury it. You don't smell anything when you bury it. Yeah. It takes a longer time for bones to compost.
But there are some rules that they have laid out to do the composting.
Oh, what are the rules?
I don't know, but there are some rules, is what they were saying.
Okay.
In the news.
You can't put your dead body in the backyard?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can, but again, there are some rules they were saying. It has to be, this much deep or something like that.
Yeah, okay. There are some rules how you can compost a dead body. Yes. Our state here, Washington State, it's the only state in the whole United States where they passed a law like that you can be composted. You should tell the teacher, I want to give a seminar on how to compost a dead body. Huh? Anyway, the plants composted naturally, right? When a plant dies, then it falls down on the ground, right? It's not growing anymore, and eventually it disappears into the earth, and it's composted. Now, let's say you could do an experiment with one leaf or one plant, right? But this is happening on a massive scale, on the earth, all over the earth. And eventually, it's the source of producing coal, oil, and natural gas from that glucose. And the glucose, goes into different transformations, and eventually it can become, under tremendous pressure and heat, it becomes these different these different sources of energy: coal, oil, and natural gas. Yes, Tulsi. What?
Two buildings were made, and I think they were apartments, and they decided to put, since it was so smoky everywhere, it became polluted, the entire place, and they put plants everywhere on the building. They grew plants on the top of the building that led down. And
So why did they do that?
because it was all polluted, and then
Well, what's the pollution? It's the pollution. You have too much carbon dioxide, right? Which is when you exhale carbon dioxide, and you can, if there's too much carbon dioxide, then it does a lot of different things. They claim it causes global warming because it sort of stops the sunlight from coming in freely through the atmosphere, right? Yes. In your class, yes. Give him the microphone. You see, what we're discussing now, right, from a point of view of Krishna consciousness, they're also discussing in your class, but without Krishna involved in it, right? So this is not some strange subject. This is real science. And what you're learning in the school is junk. What? You learned this in school. Yeah, go ahead. Did they talk about Krishna at all? No. Go ahead.
So in our class, every Thursday we have this magazine and hot cocoa. So in that magazine, a magazine and hot cocoa.
Oh, you drink hot cocoa.
Every Thursday.
Every Thursday.
Okay. So in that magazine, it said
In about 5 years, you'll have that magazine and hot marijuana. But that's coming. That's coming. Your class hasn't advanced yet to that stage. Go ahead.
in the magazine, it said the scientists say that we have 10 years to stop global warming, or otherwise the world will end.
Dead. You're gonna
Yeah,
be
the world
dead.
will end.
And you're going to be composted. Yeah. Well, you see, that is called, let me tell you what that's called. That's called a scare tactic. It's the same thing that happens to you when you go into the ghost house in the amusement park. What happens when you go into the ghost house? Yes. Yeah, you get scared. You get creeped out or scared, right? You go in there, you hear people, and they're having a good time getting scared, and they're paying for it, right? So what did they do to you in your class? Did they scare you? Then in 10 years,
In the magazine, it says that scientists say we have 10 years to stop global warming.
or
Or we'll die.
we'll die. You have 10 years. When they said that in 1970. Did you know that? Yeah, they also said 2012. You see, it's called a scare tactic. When you get scared, then you start doing things that you would never do before. Right. Okay. So let's talk some more about this carbon cycle. So, the continuous process by which carbon is exchanged between living organisms and the environment. Carbon flows from one reservoir to the other to form the carbon cycle. Changes that put carbon gases into the atmosphere result in warmer temperatures on Earth. Well, that's why Tulsi gave the example that there was too much pollution, so they on these buildings, so they planted gardens on the roof and other places, so that the plants can absorb the excess carbon and release oxygen. That's what happens. You see, it's a wonderful process. People pollute the atmosphere with carbon, and then the plants absorb it and transform it back to oxygen, and they make glucose, which is the source of energy for your body as well as for industry, you see, and makes your cars run and so forth. So if you understand the carbon cycle, then you'll begin to understand how smart Krishna is. And scientists, they haven't discovered anything. They didn't make the carbon cycle. All they did was, little by little, they're finding out what a great scientist Krishna is. Did the scientists make the carbon cycle? Right? No. Did they make the sun? Did they make the earth revolve on its axis? They haven't done anything. All they're doing is finding out about something somebody else did. You understand that? They don't say that to you. What they try and do is scare you. Once you get scared, you think, oh my God, the world's going to come to an end. Oh, what are we going to do? Oh my God, Mommy, we have to compost everything, and you should stop driving your car, and we should stop breathing. Yeah, well, look, this is a bunch of nonsense. Okay, so let's go to the next one. But then you see how this is happening. What happens is the plants die, animals die, human beings die, they're composted and made into fossil fuels. And then those fossil fuels are energy that goes into factories and cars and different things. And they have exhausts, every car has an exhaust pipe, right? Except for electric cars. So do electric cars have an exhaust pipe? But wait a minute, where does the electricity come from? Huh? Factory. Does a factory have carbon emissions?
Battery.
Oh, the battery, okay. But, no, wait a minute. Where does the electricity come from? It doesn't come from the battery. The battery just stores the electricity. You have to plug your car in. Like my daughter has a Tesla, right? She's got to plug it in every day, right? Where does the electricity come from? Either coal or iron or oil or natural gas, or it can come from windmills, or not windmills, but wind turbines, and from it can come from nuclear reactors also, or it can come from hydro plants. So, but where if let's say it comes from the wind or from a hydro plant or from a solar panel, where is that energy coming from? From the sun. The sun causes the wind. You know how the sun causes the wind? Low pressure and high pressure. How does that happen? Because the sun is shining, but certain parts of the earth will absorb the sunshine, and other parts of the earth will reflect the sunshine, right? So that creates high pressure and low pressure. So when there's high pressure and low pressure, it starts a movement of air. It becomes wind. But we'll get into all this. You see, this is real science. This is not the junk science that you learn, and we're not trying to scare anybody. We're trying to, this is called education. Instead of scaring you, we're trying to educate you, to learn how this is happening and who set it up. The scientists didn't set all these things up. They're just discovering it for themselves. It's already existing because there's a bigger scientist. So now the factories and the cars and the human beings put carbon back into the air, in the form of carbon dioxide, and even the plants release some carbon dioxide also, and then it goes into that cycle again. And then the plants absorb the carbon dioxide and create the energy with the help of the sun's energy, right? Okay, so now we'll go to the next slide. There are two types of carbon cycles. There's the fast cycle and the slow cycle. So the fast carbon cycle, or biological carbon cycle, is the movement of carbon through life forms on Earth. So, how is that? So we explain the plants absorb the sunlight, pull up water from their roots and oxygen from the air, and they produce glucose, and eventually the plants die and they decay or they're composted. And how does the composting happen? Bacteria helps to compost. Bacteria are very small, tiny things. If it wasn't for bacteria, we would all die. People think bacteria is a bad thing. No, it's not a bad thing. But there are good bacteria and bad bacteria. But most bacteria are helping us maintain our life. They help us digest food. They help, and they perform the composting of plants and bodies and so forth. So plants die, they decay, and decompose. And then animals and human beings eat plants for energy. Their excretion, or their stool, and their dead bodies also decompose, right? So decomposition is the process by which organic substances are broken down into a more simple organic matter. The process is essential for recycling the finite matter that occupies physical space in the biosphere. Well, that's a technical definition, but actually decomposition means bacteria eat you. And they break down the complex protein molecules and other complex carbohydrate molecules into simple sugars again. So it says here, by decomposition, bacteria break down organic matter into carbon dioxide and methane. So methane, if you come to the farm, you'll see I have a biodigester. Your stomach and your intestinal tract is a biodigester also, right? So what does my biodigester do? I put cow dung into it, liquefied cow dung, and the bacteria in the cow dung begin to grow. The bacteria are living entities. It begins to grow, and it begins to digest the cow dung, and it produces two things. It produces cow dung compost tea, and it produces methane gas. All these things are hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons are called organic chemicals that are made of uniquely carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. Now, there are inorganic chemicals also, right? But organic chemicals, things that let's say, seem to sustain life. They don't really sustain life. It's the soul that's sustaining life. But they seem to sustain life. You can't sustain life with inorganic chemicals. Like, for example, plastic is an inorganic chemical. Can you eat plastic and sustain your life? No. Although the Chinese make plastic rice. Did you know that? Huh? Cabbage? Plastic cabbage?
Yeah, I think it's flying. It's like
Okay. Don't buy anything from China, including cell phones. It's all dangerous. Okay, so anyway, so it says here, also, carbon dioxide is released when fossil fuels are burned. So when you burn natural gas or coal or gasoline, these things, it releases carbon dioxide. And then the plants breathe in the carbon dioxide and they breathe out oxygen. So now you see why they planted plants on the roof of those buildings where there was a lot of carbon dioxide. Yeah, you see. Now, if you breathe in carbon dioxide, you'll die eventually. There's carbon dioxide and there's carbon monoxide. When people want to commit suicide, what they do is they connect their exhaust pipe through a pipe and they put the pipe through a window of the car and they try and close the window as much as possible and they just sit there and breathe in the carbon monoxide and they die in about 20 minutes. But if you just breathed in carbon dioxide, I'm pretty sure you would also die. It would take longer, but you would die also because you're not getting oxygen. Oxygen is the number one food for your body. How can you prove that, Arush? How can you prove that oxygen is the number one food of your body? Yeah, how fast though? Give me some time factor. How fast do you think? Yeah. Yeah, you're right. So if someone chokes you, you can't breathe. It would take a minute or two, maybe 3 minutes maximum, you're dead. Now, how long does it take to die if you don't drink any water? Huh? Yeah, it would probably be about between 10 and 20 days. How long can you live if you don't eat any food at all? Yeah, well, it depends what size you are. If you're really thin, it would be faster. If you really are supersized, it would take a little longer, you know. So you see, therefore, which is the most important food for the body? Oxygen, right? Now, let's say you do this. You buy a pack of Marlboro cigarettes and you light them up and you start smoking it. Is that good for you or bad for you? Why is it bad? Because your lungs are meant to breathe in air, right? And then extract oxygen. But if you start putting smoke in your lungs, let's say you're in a room and they lock the doors and the windows and they put smoke into the room. How would you feel? Huh? Yeah, you'd start coughing and your eyes would start tearing and eventually you would die. So that means because you're inhaling the smoke. But when people smoke a cigarette, what are they doing? Inhaling smoke. That's got to be like the dumbest thing a person can do. Right? Do you see people smoking? Yes? Where? Where? In Seattle. When?
On Sankirtan.
On Sankirtan, yeah. So that means that kid is really, really, really dumb. Yes? Okay, give her the microphone. Pass the microphone.
In our school, there's like many kids who apparently call themselves as depressed or like are undergoing like peer pressure and everything, and then they like to be cool or to like help their depression, they start smoking or like vaping, not smoking. They start vaping.
Vaping.
Yeah, vaping. So then they like go into the school's bathroom and then they start vaping there, or like they get jewels from like other people and they start jeweling there and everything like that. And like if they get too attached into vaping or juuling, then they start smoking pot or smoking weed, and like, yeah, it's just really sad because our principal has said many times to like not vape at school and everything like that, but then they still do it. But I don't get like why she doesn't like do anything about it. Like, you know what I mean? Like she just like gives warnings and everything, but the students never really stop. And like even if she like expels them, that's not gonna like stop them from vaping or smoking or anything like that. So
there you go. That is called liberalism. They're liberal with derogatory or negative things. Yes. Vaping. It's this again. It's made in China. It's anything made in China. Don't buy anything made in China. It's all junk. It's a thing that creates a vapor. Vapor is a liquid that becomes a gas, right? Just like, when you boil water, what happens? Yeah, there's a vapor that's produced. The water transforms from a liquid to a gas. Okay? So vaping is a small, looks like a pencil almost, but a thick pencil. And it vaporizes a liquid. Now that liquid is water with perfumes in it, or it's water with marijuana in it, or it's water with something in it. And it vaporizes, and you breathe it in. And they say it's better than a cigarette, because a cigarette has nicotine and other things. But you can put the nicotine in the vaporizer also. So they sell the, yes. What's mean? Means a microphone?
So in January of 2019, there was a research published which showed that when vaping was initially promoted as, an safe alternative to smoking, what they have now found is that vaping actually increases the chances of induction into smoking. So those who vape, so the rates of people.
Well, she said that those who are depressed vape, and it makes them more depressed. Then they start smoking. Right. Is that right? Yeah. That's it. What? No, Juul. You didn't say Juul. Juul is a nicotine product, but you can take it without smoking, and it gives you the same feeling as smoking, but now you're not breathing in smoke. It's a new thing that's come out as an alternative to smoking. But, coffee also, is an alternative to smoking, and so-called. Okay, it's still a vape. Juul is the name of a product. It's still a nicotine product. Right. Okay, so now you see, you get the point here that Krishna has made a system. The scientists didn't make it. Krishna has made a system where what you exhale, and is considered a toxic, potentially toxic thing, carbon dioxide, is absorbed by the plants, and the plants release oxygen, right? And they release a little bit of carbon dioxide, but not compared to the amount of oxygen that they replace. So here, this cycle is going on. So this is the fast carbon cycle. Now there's a slow carbon cycle. Okay, there's a description. The next one is a description of the fast carbon cycle. Plants breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. Through a process called photosynthesis, plants, with the use of sunlight, convert carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and water from the soil into glucose and oxygen. This process is also responsible for plants' growth. When animals eat plants, they acquire carbon stored in the plant tissues. Some of the carbon acquired by animals is used for the animals living, some stored in animal tissues, and the rest is released into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide in respiration. Actually, it's exhalation, but anyway. When plants and animals die, their bodies decompose. Decomposition is a process by which organic substances are broken down into more simple organic matter. By the process of decomposition, bacteria breaks down organic matter into carbon dioxide and methane. Some carbon from the plants that are buried is also converted into fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas. When these fuels are used by humans, carbon dioxide is released back into the atmosphere. So what I do now is I get all the peelings from the kitchen. I take it to the farm, not all of them, but some of it. And I bury them in my growing boxes. And I noticed something very interesting that happened. This was like a natural experiment. Now, what are the peelings from the kitchen? So you have tomato peelings, you have the top of a carrot, right, that they throw away. Huh? Potatoes, you have bananas, orange peels, all that. So the head of the carrot produces a new plant. Did you know that? Yeah. It doesn't produce a carrot, but it produces carrot greens, which you can eat. Then the seeds from the tomatoes produces tomato plants. I see tomato plants coming up where I planted, where I put. Well, what's going on? It's composting is taking place, right? But at the same time, any seeds, it can be seeds from pumpkins or squashes. It can be seeds from the tomatoes. It can be seeds from the bell peppers. They sprout. And because right now the temperature of the soil is 50 degrees. Because a month ago it was like 30, 40 degrees. Now it's 50 degrees. As soon as the earth warms up, things and there's rain, things sprout immediately. The life comes back. So I'm seeing now, wherever I put the cuttings from the kitchen, they're sprouting plants. You see, this is Krishna. This is the cycles in nature. We're gonna go step by step and study all these different cycles. This is the way to study science. And by the way, it gets so interesting. What I'm hoping is that after, coming out with a whole textbook about these different cycles, you'll get so interested that you'll want to study as a major in high school and college microbiology, plant biology, so that you'll become experts in these scientific things that can be used in our supply chain for our farms in the future. And you'll all be working together without working in Microsoft, Amazon, whatever. Right? Haribol.
यशोमती नंदन ब्रजबर नागर गोकुल रंजन काना यशोमती नंदन ब्रजबर नागर गोकुल रंजन काना गोपी परनदन मदन मनोहर गोपी परनदन मदन मनोहर कालिय दमन विदाना अमल हरिनाममिय विलासा अमल हरिनाममिय विलासा विपिन पुरंदर नवीन नगर बोर बंसी बदान सुवासा प्रजन पालन सुरकुल नासन प्रजन पालन सुरकुल नासन नंद गोदन रखवाला गोविंद माधव नवनीत तस्कर गोविंद माधव नवनीत तस्कर सुंदर नंद गोपाला यमुना तट चर गोपी बसन हर रस रसिक कृप मोया श्री राधा वल्लभ वृंदावन नटवर श्री राधा वल्लभ Vrindavana Natabara Bhakti Vinoda Shraya Yashomati Nandana Brajabara Nagara Gokula Ranjana Kana Jayo Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Radhe Jayo Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Radhe Jayo Sitaram Jayo Sitaram Jayo Sitaram Jayo Lakshman Hanuman Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha Jayo Lakshmi Narasimha Jayo Jagannatha Jayo Jagannatha Jayo Baladeva Jayo Subhadra Jayo Gauranita Jayo Gauranita Jayo Gauranita Jayo Gauranita Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Now the next frame shows the stages of the fast carbon cycle. So the first stage is, let's show that, stages of the fast carbon cycle. The first stage is plants breathe in carbon dioxide and through photosynthesis produce glucose and oxygen. Phase 2. Animals, including human beings, eat plants and other animals that eat plants. So those are the asuras, the demons, the living entities, the human beings who are demons, and plants, and the animals. They eat other animals that eat plants. And then number 3, animals' excretion, meaning their stool, dead plant decay, so animal excretion and dead plants decay and decompose. And number 4, dead animals also decompose. And number 5, decomposition breaks down organic matter into carbon dioxide and methane. And then the carbon dioxide is reabsorbed by the plants through photosynthesis, and it continues. So it's a cycle. You see? You see that? Okay. So now we're going to study the slow carbon cycle called geological carbon cycle. This is very profound because it shows that this is happening on a massive scale. That's why you have so much oil in Saudi Arabia, so much oil in the United States, so much oil in Canada, so much oil in different countries. Because of the slow carbon cycle, that can take hundreds and thousands of years, many thousands of years. So, there, let's say, where does it start? It starts. So there's a transfer of carbon into the oceans from the atmosphere and land surface, and then the deposition of carbon compounds on the ocean floor, and then the conversion of the carbon compounds into carbon-rich rocks. Radha Nilamada Ki Jai. And then intense heat and pressure converts these rocks, which are called limestone, into more metals and carbon dioxide. And then there's a release of carbon dioxide back in the atmosphere through volcanoes. And then it starts all over again. So if we look here in this diagram, so there's rain, and there's carbon dioxide in the air. So the rain captures some of the carbon dioxide and produces what's called carbonic acid. And that enters into, eventually the rainwater, or it could be snow, it melts and it produces rivers. It melts from the mountains and creates rivers. And the carbonic acid reacts with the Earth's surface, producing component ions by the process of chemical weathering. Okay, well, we would have to understand what those technical terms mean. But in any case, this carbonic acid, which is a mixture of carbon dioxide in the air and water, touches the Earth and becomes rivers, and it produces other things, and all this goes eventually into the ocean. These component ions finally precipitate in the ocean as calcite, CaCO3. And by continuous deposition and burial of calcite, it forms a rock called limestone. This cycle continues on the seafloor and is pushed further deeper into the earth by a process called subduction. Eventually, extreme heat and pressure in the earth forms metals and releases carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere through volcanic eruption. So, and then you have the carbon dioxide back in the air, and then it repeats itself. So that's called the slow carbon cycle, or the geological carbon cycle. So now it says, let's go to key processes in the slow carbon cycle. Go two frames. Key processes in the slow carbon cycle. Weathering, the destructive processes that change the physical and chemical characteristics of rocks at the Earth's surface. So that's a definition. It's called weathering. You have to go two frames now. Go to the key processes in the slow carbon cycle. Okay. So this is a definition of a term called weathering. Where do we see that weathering? Yeah, so that's called, when the carbonic acid, when the rain falls and it connects with carbon dioxide in the air, it touches the earth, eventually it becomes streams, and then the process of chemical weathering takes place. What is weathering? The definition of it is the destructive processes that change the physical and chemical characteristics of rocks at the Earth's surface. Physical breakdown of large rocks into smaller rocks is called mechanical weathering. Changes in a rock's composition due to exposure to the atmosphere and water is called chemical weathering. So you see this happening. I mean, if you hike on Mount Si, or you go up the I-90, you can go hiking, North Bend and other places, and you'll see streams coming down the mountain. In fact, you can even go bathing in those streams, but it's ice-cold water. It's basically the rain or the snow that it's on the higher altitude of the mountain. Like right now, if you look at Mount Rainier, it's all snow there still. But that's going to melt with this heat, and it forms rivers. And all the mountains, the snow melts and it forms rivers or streams. And if you hike up the mountain, you'll see these streams coming really fast down the mountain. And if you look in them, you'll see there's many rocks. Those rocks are being decomposed gradually. That's called weathering. So bigger rocks become medium rocks, and the medium rocks become smaller rocks, and the smaller rocks become smaller rocks. So that process is called weathering. And when the rivers end up into the oceans, because of the weathering of the rocks and the carbonic acid and so forth. And acid is something that wears things down, right? So now it produces something called calcite, calcium carbon trioxide. And this calcite is eventually buried, and it forms rocks called limestone. And limestone, if I'm not mistaken, is calcium carbonate. That's another thing. Yeah. And calcium carbonate, I buy a lot of calcium carbonate to produce toothpaste. It's a normal product in toothpaste, yes.
Pretty sure you can find some in caves.
Some what?
Limestone crystals, you can find them in caves.
Yes, you can find. Well, you have the Dover Hills in England. It's all limestone, and you have limestone cliffs and areas in Canada. Canada is a big producer of calcium carbonate. They don't produce it, but they harvest it, right? Yeah, anywhere where there was an ocean before, like you can go to Colorado and find, I'm pretty sure you can find limestone there too, because there were ancient oceans before, and before it became mainland America, there were oceans there. If you go back thousands and thousands of years ago. Okay, so this is the slow carbon cycle, all right? Now, this weathering is the destructive processes that change the physical and chemical characteristics of rocks at the Earth's surface. Physical breakdown of large rocks into smaller rocks is called mechanical weathering. Changes in a rock's composition due to exposure to the atmosphere and water is called chemical weathering. Physical breakdown of large rocks into smaller rocks is called mechanical weathering. And changes in a rock's composition due to exposure to the atmosphere and water is called chemical weathering. So there's mechanical weathering and chemical weathering. And then there's subduction, the process by which one tectonic plate moves beneath another. So this is what causes earthquakes. So there are major, a tectonic plate is a major, let's say, formation of rock and earth. And when one plate moves beneath another, it causes an earthquake. And then an earthquake pushes the earth up. So a tectonic uplift is the portion of the total geological uplift of the mean Earth surface that is not attributable to an isostatic response to unloading. Anyway, they used all this technical language. Basically, an earthquake is an explosion that takes place when there's too much buildup of these gases underneath the surface of the Earth. And then it explodes and puts a huge amount of carbon into the atmosphere. Okay, so this is a short explanation of the carbon cycle. And there's two cycles. There's the quick carbon cycle and the slow carbon cycle. And because of this cycle, we are able to live because it converts carbon dioxide, which is what we exhale, back into oxygen, which is what we inhale. Okay, and it produces energy in the form of glucose that transforms eventually into oil, gas, and coal, and so forth. So this is what is keeping us alive. This is what produces food and energy. And it all starts from Bhumir apo nalu vayu kam mano buddhire vacha ahankara ityame bina pakritir astata. Krishna says, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, all together these 8 constitute my separated material energies. So this is just one cycle in nature. There are many cycles in nature, and we were going to study them off and on, not in an intense way, but off and on. We diverted from our regular subject, which was the 3 modes of material nature. So, who did their homework? Okay, well, we'll start with Madhava.
The mode of goodness means greater knowledge and greater sense of happiness. A man in the mode of goodness is not affected by material miseries. In the mode of goodness, one is more or less free from sinful reaction. In the mode of passion, one is always hankering for material enjoyment and wants to enjoy sense gratification. Also, he is attached to the fruits of his activities. The mode of ignorance is the opposite of the mode of goodness. A person in the mode of ignorance becomes mad and cannot understand anything.
Okay, becomes mad. What does that mean?
Like,
Did they just become angry?
no, like crazy. Like
Yes,
can't
crazy,
understand.
exactly.
They cannot understand anything. It always appears frustrated and is addicted to intoxicants and sleeping.
He always appears.
He.
Yeah. Right. So those are the kids in Srivani. Some of the kids in Srivani's school. Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Next, Advitya.
The mode of goodness is purer than the...
Go ahead. You're right.
The mode of goodness frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge and passion. In this mode, people have lots of desires. In this mode, your senses cannot work for Krishna. You should only do desires for Krishna. Ignorance. The mode of darkness is the mode of ignorance. In this mode, people become delusional.
Haribol. Very good. Thank you. Agastya. Hare Krishna.
There are 3 modes of material nature that affect every living entity in this material world. The three modes control almost everything. According to Bhagavad Gita 14.2, the only knowledge that is not contaminated by the three modes of material nature is transcendental knowledge. Let's take a closer look at the three modes. Goodness is the best of the modes. A person who is mostly in the mode of goodness is content with what he has and is always happy. He is also very knowledgeable and is freed from all sinful reactions. A person mostly in the mode of passion is active and always working. He wants better things than he already has, and he isn't content. People who are mostly controlled by passion have unlimited desires. A person who is mostly in the mode of ignorance is in a bad situation and doesn't want to change it because he's too lazy. They sleep a lot and are extremely lazy when they are awake. They are not even active like people in the mode of passion. The only thing that is untouched by goodness, passion, and ignorance is transcendental knowledge. By learning and following transcendental knowledge, you can break out of the modes of material nature and go back to Krishna. We came to this material world because of envy for Krishna. That means you are envious of everything, including yourself. We must cast aside our envy and go beyond the three modes and escape the ocean of material existence and go back to Godhead.
Very good, very good. Anybody else? Anybody else? Yes. Okay, let's go to Shrestha and then.
So, to understand the three modes of material nature, to understand what the three modes of material nature are, we must learn how we come under the influence of the modes. We all once began in the spiritual world performing service for Krishna. So how could we leave the spiritual world to come to such a horrible place like the material world? It all began with a thought which Maya transplanted into our minds. Why is Krishna the center of attention? Why do we have to serve him? This thought bothers us so deeply that we begin to believe this false information and thus fall to the material world, or in other words, fall under the control of the three modes of material nature. These three modes are as follows. Goodness. When one is in goodness, they experience symptoms of happiness and knowledge. The mode of goodness is the best of the three modes, as those who are in it are free from sinful reaction. Nevertheless, many people in the mode of goodness fall down due to the pride which they gain when feeling that they are very knowledgeable. They do not gain any sinful reaction, but the reaction is still there. Those in the mode of goodness are often reborn into higher positions, however they never gain liberation. In Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, 37th verse, it is said that that which begins like poison and ends like nectar is the experience of happiness in the mode of goodness. But if the mode of goodness cannot achieve one liberation, what can? Transcendental goodness. Transcendental goodness is dovetailing everything for the service of Krishna, and therefore it is the ultimate. Passion. The mode of passion is nothing but the attraction between opposite sexes. As Srila Prabhupada said in Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, 17th verse, woman has an attraction for man, and man has an attraction for woman. This is called the mode of passion. Due to this constant attraction, one tries to impress others by heightening their position, fame, or physical attributes. When one is in passion, they experience symptoms of activeness. Those in the mode of passion are the people who develop hankerings for honor and sense gratification. They normally have to work very hard, which leaves them deep in the reactions of their fruitive activities. As Srila Prabhupada says in the purport of Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, 7th verse, in order to please his wife, children, and society, and to keep up his prestige, one has to work. Therefore, the whole material world is more or less in the mode of passion. Modern civilization is considered to be advanced in the standard of the mode of passion. Formerly, the advanced condition was considered to be in the mode of goodness. If there is no liberation for those in the mode of goodness, what to speak of those who are entangled in the mode of passion? Hence, in the mode of passion, as explained in Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, 38th verse, one begins in the taste of nectar, but that ends up turning into poison. Then ignorance. When one is in ignorance, they experience symptoms of helplessness. Most in ignorance are so delusional that they have lost their ability of discrimination and often indulge in intoxicants. One sign of a person in ignorance is that they sleep more than 6 hours a day, which is the necessary amount.
Instead, they sleep for up to 10 to 12 hours. It can hereby be understood that a multitude of the people in this material world are in the mode of ignorance. What starts delusional and ends similarly in poison is nothing but the mode of ignorance. As Srila Prabhupada said in the purport of Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, 39th verse, there is no happiness either in the beginning or at the end. For the person in the mode of passion, there might be some kind of ephemeral happiness in the beginning and at the end distress. But for the person in the mode of ignorance, there is only distress both in the beginning and at the end. This is the mode of ignorance. Hence, these are the three modes of material nature and how to identify them in this material world.
Very good. Haribol. Next, Srivani. Go ahead.
Oh, he can read first.
Okay.
The mode of goodness is when a living entity is showing happiness. They are not affected by material miseries. A living entity situated in the mode of goodness is
Okay,
free
what does that mean? They're not affected by material miseries. Does that mean it never happens? Huh? What does it mean? Anybody? Yes?
It happens, but they're above, they're basically, they don't react to it. So.
Yeah. They're not affected by it, means it doesn't disturb their devotional service, even though there are miseries. Go ahead.
A living entity situated in the mode of goodness is free from all sinful reactions. In the mode of goodness, one can understand what is right and what is wrong. The next mode is passion. In this mode, the living entity is very active. In the mode of passion, the living entity has many desires and longings. With this, the living entity is bound to fruitive activities. The mode of passion is characterized with the attachment between man and woman, and the attachment between woman and man. When this is increased, then the living entity develops the hankering for material enjoyment. In this mode, the connection of the senses to the sense objects happens through senses, which will end in misery. The last mode is ignorance. When a living entity is situated in the mode of ignorance, they are lazy. In the mode of ignorance, the living entity becomes crazy. Therefore, the mode of ignorance is the exact opposite of the mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, you can understand what is right and what is wrong. When you're in the mode of ignorance, you can understand what is right and what is wrong. This way, the best of modes is goodness.
Haribol. Thank you. Okay, Srivani.
When under the modes of material nature, one is happy, another is active, and another is helpless. In other words, one is in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. So let's talk about these three modes. In Bhagavad Gita 14.6, it explains about a man in the mode of goodness. A man in the mode of goodness is not affected by material miseries. He becomes wiser than the rest. In Vedic literature, it says that mode of goodness means greater knowledge and greater sense of happiness. The downside of being in the mode of goodness is that he becomes proud, and he becomes proud that he is smarter than the others. An example of this are the scientists and the philosophers. As long as they are attracted and working in the mode of goodness, they will have to take birth in the modes of nature. So there is no chance of liberation or going to the spiritual mode. Instead, they are stuck in the cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. But due to the illusion of material energy, they think they're living a good life. In Bhagavad Gita 14.7, it explains about the mode of passion. The mode of passion is described by the attraction between man and woman. And when the passion is increased, he or she wants to enjoy sense gratification. A person in the mode of passion wants to be recognized for something and wants to live a happy life with a happy family. As long as he desires these things, he has to as long as he desires these things, he has to work hard, and thus will be bound by such activities. And since people in the mode of goodness have no chance of attaining liberation, what can we say about people entangled in the mode of passion? In Bhagavad Gita 14.8, it describes people in the mode of ignorance. The mode of ignorance is the opposite of the mode of goodness. When in the mode of goodness, one can understand what is what, while in the mode... when a person is in the mode of goodness, one can understand what is what, while in the mode of ignorance, the opposite is true. A man in the mode of ignorance becomes mad, and he cannot understand a thing as it is. For example, humans are mortal, and that means death is certain. Yet people work very hard to accumulate money and completely ignore the eternal spirit. This is a perfect example of ignorance. Ignorant people are very reluctant to make progress in spiritual understanding. These people are very lazy, and they are not as active as people who are influenced by the mode of passion. Another quality of a person under the mode of ignorance is that he sleeps more than 6 hours a day. When a man is under the mode of ignorance, he has no chance of going back to Godhead.
Wow. You should do a seminar in your school. Take a survey. How many in a mode of ignorance, mode of passion, and mode of goodness? Thank you very much. Very good. And your homework for next week is we should send this presentation on a carbon cycle to everyone, email it to everyone. So you have to have your email addresses. You can give them to Prabhuji's in the back there. And you can, whatever you didn't understand in this presentation, it's not a long presentation, it's a short presentation, but we want to make it better, right, more understandable. So whatever you don't understand, I mean, I can see things that I don't understand in this right now. See, it didn't show, let me just make sure, it didn't show how you end up with, oh yeah, it's a little bit of explanation of how you end up with fossil fuels, because everyone's talking about fossil fuels, right? So you just look at this and make suggestions how you think this would be better, okay? I'm going to make my suggestions also, because we want to make a textbook that's understandable to kids and to adults. So you can research on your own the carbon cycle and what was presented here, and see if you can make it better or more understandable. Okay? So that is your research homework. Yeah.
So as we heard, mode of goodness people, they don't suffer. Basically, they are not.
No, they don't let suffering interfere with their devotional service. They're not affected by it.
Yeah, but they are not doing everything for Krishna's pleasure, so why they are not affected? Because in transcendental goodness, people do everything for Krishna's pleasure. So that's the reason they are not affected by the
Well,
but why,
if you understand you're not this body, and the body belongs to Krishna, then you won't be affected. So you go at a higher level of goodness, right? The whole idea is spiritual life is progressive. So when you come to the mode of goodness, you begin to learn.
because of their knowledge, they are not this body,
They're not what?
they are not affected by the movie.
Well, right now we're affected to a certain degree, but by hearing this, by studying it more, you'll come to a point of not being affected, knowing that the ultimate solution, it's like this. Let's say you're in the ocean, right? But you don't have a boat. And you're just floating. You're trying to save your energy, right? just floating, hoping that someone will find you, right? So your only hope is to stay alive as long as possible, because that'll increase your chance of being found. But if you give up, you'll die very quickly. But if you don't give up, you stay determined, then there's more of a possibility that someone's going to find you. So in the mode of goodness, we realize, that we have a chance of being liberated from this whole thing. But if we give up, we'll die. We'll go back in the mode of passion and ignorance. So in the mode of goodness, if you are regulated, then every day you're learning a little bit more, it gives you inspiration not to give up. And you're so busy learning that you're excited by it. So that's the real mode of goodness. You get excited by learning. And then you realize it's not only learning, it's the more you learn, the more you serve also. So that nourishes your excitement also. So this way you advance. You can advance very quickly in the mode of from the mode of goodness to transcendental goodness in the association of devotees. Then you won't be affected. And when you are affected, if you have the association of devotees, they'll explain to you, what's what, and you'll say, okay, now I realize that things are not hopeless. I'm going to continue. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Yes.
I didn't do the homework, but I just skimmed through it. So the question is, explain how to recognize mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance. And you wanted us to explain briefly. So basically, we are part and parcel of Krishna, and we have eternal servitor position with Krishna. But when we come in contact with material nature, we are conditioned by 3 modes of material nature. In the mode of goodness, we are happy. In the mode of passion, we are always in active and doing activities, fruitive activities. In mode of ignorance, we feel helpless and binded.
Mode of passion, you're engaged in a lot of activities, but you're easily disturbed.
Yes, and then in mode of ignorance, it binds one completely to ignorance and madness. So how to recognize them so basically the manifestations of the mode of goodness can be experienced when the person is situated in right position, and he can hear things properly in the right position and can taste the things in right position, and he becomes cleansed outside and inside. And
okay,
symptom is
basically such a person is becoming more and more enlivened by knowledge and devotion. That's a symptom by which you can recognize someone in the mode of goodness.
Yes, mode of goodness and happiness.
Yeah, and happiness, yes.
And when there is increase in mode of passion, then the symptoms of great attachment, fruitive activity, intense endeavor, uncontrollable desire, hankering develop. Hankering for the sense gratification. And in mode of ignorance, you want to work whimsically for no purpose, and illumination and knowledge is absent, and the person has the capacity to work, he doesn't make any endeavor, and life is inactive. So basically during any particular day, we can be in different modes of material nature. It can fluctuate from tamas to ignorance to passion and to mode of goodness. But when we can transcend all these mode of material nature by Krishna consciousness, then there is no sochati or kankshati, and the person can focus 24/7 in Krishna and performs Krishna karma and attains that eternal transcendental bliss because of situated in Krishna consciousness.
Okay, so basically the mode of passion, one can become easily disturbed and angry. Mode of ignorance, they're just ignorant. They don't even get disturbed, they're just ignorant. Addicted to sleep and laziness and uncleanliness and all that. But mode of passion, see, we have to be able to recognize these things in ourselves so that we can catch ourselves before we are totally, let's say, dominated by these modes. Right? So that's why we have to be able to recognize it. Okay, yes?
Demoniac qualities fall under between the mode
Where do they come from? Where are they located?
of their mode of ignorance and mode of combination, mode of passion.
Well, the Ravana was an example, right? He was very active. But he's an active demon. Plus, he was very intelligent. So people like Ravana are the most dangerous people in society because they're intelligent and they're active. Therefore, they can do a lot of harm. But people in the mode of ignorance, like Kumbhakarma, he's extremely dangerous, but a very short period of time, right? Most of the time he's just sleeping, you know. So the people that do the most harm are the ones that are active demons, that are highly educated. You know, they can do the most harm. Haribol.